Sitting in the heart of Canada's National Capital Region is the riding of Ottawa Centre. With steady government jobs, this is a city where families enjoy some of the highest median incomes and highest education rates in Canada, to match beautiful views of the Ottawa River and historic buildings where the first MPs of an independent Canada convened in 1867. But this is also Ottawa, where 2,000 Canadians sleep in increasingly busy shelters every night, and over 10,000 families sit on the city's wait list for affordable housing. Covering the heart of downtown Ottawa, the riding encompasses both these extremes, and any candidate hoping to take the seat will need to balance the needs of both populations.
It's so fun to knock on doors in Ottawa Centre because you come across people who will say, like, oh, I voted for Ed Broadbent when he ran here. And then they have, you know, particular expertise in some areas. So it's a bit like, you know, a class at every door. You're learning from the people that you're talking to. It is a very engaged and informed electorate. So yeah, it's really great discussions with people talking about substantive, important issues.
I have prided myself in running on local issues because the job that I'm asking people to entrust me with is to be their local member of parliament.
It's usually a contest between the Liberals and the NDP. So they do feel that they are going to have a good chance of winning here, and that they will probably be in a very close race.
The seat has flipped between the Liberals and NDP for the better part of the last 3 decades, and political scientist Scott Bennett has seen it all. He says with a large population of civil servants, it's unlikely the Conservatives will win here. No Tory has held the seat since 1979.
So it's hard for them to get traction here because, fairly or unfairly, a lot of people who do work here and come out to vote here are a bit suspicious of the Conservatives because of some of the narratives about cutting and so forth that were associated with them in the past.
Instead, the NDP is one of the riding's most popular parties. From 2005 to 2011, the New Dems won the riding 4 times in a row, under Ed Broadbent and then Paul Dewar. But as part of 2015's Red Tide, Liberal Catherine Mckenna took the seat. Mckenna, however, isn't running this year. Instead, Team Trudeau is putting a familiar name and familiar face on the ballot.
I'm Yasser Naqvi, I'm your Liberal candidate. Just wanted to come say hello. You may remember I was your member of Provincial Parliament until 2018. I've got the experience and credibility of delivering on behalf of the community. Do you think I can count on your vote?
Well, we're still undecided.
That's totally fair.
3-time provincial representative and former Ontario Attorney General Yasser Naqvi is back and asking Ottawans for their vote. There was speculation that former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney could be convinced to carry the Liberal banner here. But Naqvi says he's not worried about any perception that he's the party's second choice.
You know, I've received a very strong encouragement from the community from the very first day when I started thinking about seeking the nomination after Catherine Mckenna's decision not to seek re-election. We got down to work. We pulled together a team, we started selling memberships, and the result is that I am the candidate for Ottawa Centre. And I'm seeing that in terms of people recognizing my experience, people recognizing my public service to the community, and I'm working very hard to earn their vote again, to be elected as a member of parliament, and to serve the community again.
Naqvi lost the provincial seat in 2018, but says he's excited to be back on the campaign trail federally this time. And he's proud of the reputation he says he's built as an effective local representative in the Ontario legislature.
You may recall I was your member of provincial parliament here in Ottawa Centre.
Absolutely, and I recall you coming to knock on the door, and there was no campaign going on.
I used to do that, and I've continued to do that if I'm elected again.
That was the most surprising thing I'd ever seen from a politician.
People know that I do listen to them, and I do take their feedback into account. So for me, it's incredible that I'm getting back at the doors and having those conversations.
Residents here are used to getting extra attention from Parliament. During her time as MP, Catherine Mckenna was the face of Canada's efforts to fight climate change, and as a local representative, she secured the federal portion of funding for the Flora footbridge. Naqvi says 11 years of experience as Ottawa Centre's provincial rep means he's up for the job. But the man who took the provincial seat from Naqvi in 2018 respectfully disagrees.
I think the people of this riding deserve a strong voice in the House of Commons, not somebody who will do whatever the Prime Minister wants. I think we need a good spot for the Civic Hospital. I think we need a bold plan for climate change. We need a future with dignity for our youth. We need someone who will speak up and not just knuckle under.
Local MPP Joel Harden says Ottawa Centre residents would be better served federally by the NDP, who have put forward Angela Mcewen.
My name's Angela. I'm the NDP candidate.
Mcewen is no political novice, having run unsuccessfully in the neighbouring riding of Ottawa-Nepean, but has never held elected office. An economist with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Mcewen says voters deserve someone who isn't afraid to think big.
What are your opinions on tax enforcement in Canada at the moment?
People are frustrated and aren't buying the Liberals' sort of, well, you know, it's nice, but we have to kind of do half measures and tinker here and tinker there and be, you know, really very careful about how we go through this. People are really not having that anymore. They're like, no, I think that we're done with trickle-down economics. We're done with being told we can't have nice things, that our lives can't be easier. We know we can.
Mcewen says she hears lots at the door, fears about COVID, concerns about climate change, and housing affordability. But most often she hears people say they want the pandemic to end, and frustration that there's an election happening at all.
What made you decide to vote? What part of the platform did you like?
I'm very interested in the way that you've understood the working class struggle. I'm a nurse at the Civic campus.
Yeah.
So, you know, through the pandemic and everything, it's really highlighted the issues that the working class face, and knowing that you understand that makes me pretty confident in my vote.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That's when people say, what's the difference between you and the Liberals? That's what I often tell them is like, we come from the working class. We have an understanding of the issues that people face and how to address them. And in a way that will actually, you know, structurally change things for the better.
The voters here are highly tuned in. Nearly 80% voted in the previous federal election and expect an MP who can deliver on the national stage and locally. In that sense, the Liberal candidate has already put wheels in motion, a plan for 1,700 local affordable housing units, with the federal party already signing off on it.
It can be done, and I will do that by working along all other partners, City of Ottawa, the provincial government, our social housing providers. I have those relationships. You know, Catherine Mckenna, who's a city councillor here and the housing advocate at Ottawa City Council, is a great resource. She and I work really well together, and I want to do the work with them to ensure that we're addressing that challenge head on.
In Ottawa, we have over 12,000 people on a wait list for affordable housing. We have 19,000 households in this city who spend more than 50, 60, 70% of their income on rent. They are always at risk of falling into homelessness. They actually fall into homelessness every month.
City Councillor Catherine Mckenna represents Somerset Ward, which covers part of the federal riding of Ottawa Centre. They spoke to us just outside a new affordable housing build undertaken by the city and partially funded by the federal government. But Mckenna says they're frustrated by the way the Liberal government's national housing strategy has rolled out. Promised funds for housing allowances to help those worst off have fallen short. What's more, part of that strategy hands cash to private developers for new builds, so long as some new units are built as affordable housing.
They define affordable as 30% of median income in the area. So in Ottawa, the average median household income is $109,000 a year. So what that comes out to per month is about $2,700 a month for a rental. So it makes absolutely no sense. That is well over 100% more than our average market rent, so let alone something that's even deeply affordable.
It was really a poorly designed program, and as a consequence, even though we have seen this big increase in rental construction in the last 5 years, only 5% of all rental starts are attributable to that particular program, and it does beg the question whether we actually needed it.
Steve Pomeroy says the high price of rent is already moving developers to build rental housing anyway, and other aspects of the Liberal government's national housing strategy are not paying off.
It's proposing over 10 years to add 160,000 units of new housing at affordable rents. But if we lost 320,000 units in 5 years, we're losing 4 units for every new one we're actually building. So without actually thinking about preserving the existing stock, how do we actually intervene in the marketplace to either stop that kind of financialization process or slow it down or offset it? We're actually spending a lot of money on the National Housing Strategy and not actually making any progress towards helping affordability.
Pomeroy says the cost of home ownership isn't solely driven by foreign buyers or blind bidding, and in that sense, proposals to curb those aspects won't help much. Instead, he says high-income households have been able to secure low interest rates and turn existing properties into big down payments for new homes. In other words, it's not the quantity of bids on new homes, but the quality.
But if you've accumulated equity of $1 million or $1.2 million over the last 15 years, now you're only taking on a mortgage of $200,000 at very low rates. So it's very, very easy for those folks to buy those homes. And it's because they've actually accumulated all of this extra equity, that's what's enabling them to purchase the house, and that's what's pushing up house prices. And obviously no political party is going to touch that question, the issue of non-taxation of capital gains. But it's those types of tax measures and regulatory measures that government have to seriously think about, as if we are going to correct the housing system. Those are not issues you want to put in your election platform.
With lower income families remaining in the rental market, rental prices continue to rise, pushing people on the lower end out. It's in this context that Catherine Mckenna has pointed questions about any plans to address housing.
All candidates have to come out with both a number and a plan of how they're going to get there and who they're going to remove. Like, if you're going to give me a number, I want to know how many of that number will get supportive housing. How many people will we be able to take who've been living at shelters for years, some people. And our shelters are filled every night, over 2,000 people. How many, in any number you give me, will come out of a shelter? How many, in any number you give me, will be able to be removed from our wait list? How many will we ensure will not fall into homelessness? Will you go and fight for more housing allowances?
Now, we tried to contact the Conservative candidate Carol Clemenhagen multiple times through phone, email, and social media, but we weren't able to get an interview. Clemenhagen has run here previously, finishing third in 2019. And Bennett says while they may not win, they'll be expecting to build on that result.
What the Conservatives have going for them here in this riding is that they have the same candidate as they had last time. And she is creating a reasonably good organization and getting her advertising out there reasonably well. She doesn't have the machine behind her that the NDP or the Liberals would in this riding. But she's building a pretty good organization over a period of years, and she's committed to it, and she's, making some progress and getting some traction. I would not be surprised if she did it a little bit better this time than she did last time. But that means, moving from 14 or 15% to 20 or 22%, which it used to be the share here for a long time.
Housing is far from this riding's only problem. Ottawa's Civic Hospital is nearly a century old and needs replacing. The plan is to build a new facility here, next to Dow's Lake. But neighbors don't want to see green space replaced by a large medical facility. To add insult to injury, residents were assured that parking for the new hospital would be underground. But the plans have changed, and the lot is now expected to take up most of Queen Juliana Park.
That no politician elected in this town in 2016 spoke up when the mayor and every elected Liberal in this town said, put the hospital right next to a World Heritage Site, rip up 500 trees, build it on uneven terrain, is a disaster.
Yasser Naqvi says the one thing he doesn't want is to reopen what he says is a settled issue, delaying work on a much-needed hospital. He was MPP when the decision was made to locate the new hospital at Dow's Lake and says while he understands resident anxieties, any location was going to be controversial.
There is no perfect site. in the downtown core. And so my focus is to ensure that we continue to move forward. We get this new hospital built. The provincial government is funding the hospital. I worked very hard when I was the MPP to secure provincial funding, and I'm happy to see the current provincial government is moving forward with that commitment. That's very important for our community. Now, I do have concerns, and I'm hearing concerns from the community as well as to the level of engagement and the consultation with the community. Some of the design elements, for example, the parquet that has been proposed, and what I want to do if I'm elected as a member of parliament to re-engage the community.
But there was another option. Tunney's Pasture, a parcel of land exclusively developed for federal buildings. The area is already well serviced by the city's new light rail line, and there are plans to redevelop the area for residential and mixed-use buildings. The NDP candidate says public consultations found Tunney's Pasture was the overwhelmingly preferred option, and Ottawa Centre residents need answers on what happened.
Over 8,000 people participated in the consultation, and the choice that came out on top was Tunney's Pasture, which makes sense. It's already developed. There's mostly parking lots there. It's near public transit, and the intersection of two lines of public transit even, right? So it's a very central location, and then all of a sudden at some point that got overturned, and it was while Mr. Naqvi was the member of provincial parliament, and he hasn't really been clear about what his role was in that or what he knew at that time, but all of a sudden that got overturned, and then now we're hearing, there was pushback about the choice and the parking garage, and so a plan was released with certain promises, but then that keeps getting worse.
Many Ottawans would like clarity on the hospital, but also clarity on when Canada will get back to normal. None more so than the city's business community, who are suffering as thousands of civil servants and their spending power continue to work from home. Main Street businesses in Ottawa have started to see some of their lunchtime regulars return, but entrepreneurs want to know when they can expect to see business get back to normal.
That's been a big issue, particularly for large urban areas like Ottawa all across Canada, is that we have these business districts, and for us here as well, the federal government, where businesses have built their plan around having them as their target market. And so they've basically had their market taken away from them. And then for us as well, tourism is a huge draw for us economically, and we still haven't had the tourists come back to the level, especially the international tourists. So a lot of those businesses were also relying on that market. So it's been significant.
Yeah, so right now it's department by department that's deciding the return to work, and it's not necessarily like the small businesses don't even necessarily have access to that information, what those plans are going to be. So one thing I think that would be really helpful is if the federal government here in Ottawa at least kind of got together and gathered those plans and let businesses know what the plan is and what that rollout looks like, so that businesses can plan for the next few months, right? Do they need to kind of just hang in there for a few months, or are most of the departments in their area going to be, still working from home for the next year? And so I think that really affects the ability of small businesses to plan and make plans.
And one of the things that I want to do as we work hard to put an end to this pandemic is work with the federal government, if I'm elected as the member of parliament, to develop a more comprehensive government-wide approach to back to office. I think the new normal will be very different than the lives we lived until March of 2020. We most likely will see some sort of a hybrid nature where some people will continue to choose to work from home, some will like to come back to the office, some may require flexibility. Whatever those new protocols look like, what I want to make sure is that we can develop a more government-wide approach to that, so that our local small businesses who rely on those individuals coming into the downtown core have some predictability. And that's, in all fairness, that's what the small businesses in the downtown core are asking for. Said, we know things have changed, but just let us know what the plan is so that we can do our planning based on that.
The Ottawa Board of Trade was early to ask for a vaccine passport system that would help Main Street businesses welcome back their regulars. And while Ontario plans to introduce its own system across the river, Quebec's is already up and running. Su-Ling Ching says a national vaccine passport would have saved hassle for a region that already thinks of itself as indivisible.
It's more important for us here in Ottawa because we don't act like we're two provinces in this region, right? We act like we're one region. So it is more frustrating, which is why we were bringing it to their attention early in the game. So it's not, would have been ideal for the tools and for the rules of engagement and the requirements to come out all at once. That would have been ideal. To be aligned with Quebec would have been ideal. This is the next best thing. So we're just going to work hard to support our businesses, ask the public to be supportive, patient with their businesses as we go through this next stage. But we believe it's the right thing to do in order to keep our economy open, which is bar none the number one thing we have to do.
For young people in this election, there's much at stake, and that's felt by Green candidate Angela Keller-Herzog. She says she's been told by her own child that she's suffering climate anxiety. But Keller-Herzog says climate change is deadly serious, and stopping it is crucial to protecting a city she loves.
This is an existential crisis that this generation on the planet at this time, we're like the last generation to turn it around. Anyways, I often find that like in old Ottawa South and the Glebe, there's like a widespread agreement on like a climate and health agenda.
Yeah, that's my number one issue for sure, is the climate.
Yeah. That's why I'm running.
The Greens won't form government in this election, but Keller-Herzog says sending a Green MP to Parliament can send a strong message to whoever becomes PM.
Well, I think that if you look at the difference that the sole Green MP has been able to make. So, for example, we have Mike Schreiner in the Ontario legislature right now, the sole Green MP. And for many years, Elizabeth May was like the sole Green voice. So I think that every single Green voice can make a huge difference so that as you look at legislation, right, you can say, hey, that's not right.
Canvassing at a street party in the old city of Ottawa, Keller-Herzog says she can see and hear frustration with the Liberal Party. But despite this, some are skeptical that another party could win the riding.
I think the problem is if Yassenacvi gets in, it means that our riding is implicitly endorsing Trudeau. I don't think anybody would really endorse Trudeau. It's a matter of whether you're going to vote locally for your guy or lady, woman, or whether you're supporting the federal leadership. I don't think anyone's supporting the federal leadership, but I think Yassenacvi is going to be hard to beat in this area, just because he's so familiar to this neighborhood.
One of her volunteers hasn't always been Green. He used to be a Liberal supporter, but said he was tired of a party that didn't align with his values.
That's right. I joined the Liberal Party when I started to get politically involved. That was for the 2015 leadership election that got Justin Trudeau elected. That was probably my first foray into politics and feeling like I should contribute in some like civic engagement sort of way. And I think Catherine Mckenna started canvassing really early on in Ottawa Centre, and I think I canvassed with her once. And then eventually I thought my efforts were better spent in the Green Party, and that the issues I cared about were more reflected in the Green Party. And since I was doing this, my job isn't related to politics. I was just doing this to participate in some way. I thought, better pick the party that reflects my values.
Other young voters in the riding have serious concerns about the end of Elections Canada's Vote on Campus program. The initiative would have been a big boost in a riding with 6 post-secondary institutions.
I could tell people during the previous election, hey, go vote. It's in University Centre. I can't do that this year.
Huzaif Kasser is president of the Carleton University Young Liberals and says fellow students who are on campus for the first time are focused on moving in and getting used to campus life. That's doubly true this year when some second years will be moving in for the first time due to the pandemic.
A lot of second-year students are moving in, and a lot of first-year students are moving in. But the second-year students that are moving in, they have not been exposed to this environment of being on campus, especially if they're moving from far away. So it's a daunting task to leave your campus and go vote. So I feel like there will be an effect there where students are scared to go out and vote, whereas the Vote on Campus program made it extremely accessible and easy to vote.
Kasser says his peers are extremely tuned in and acutely aware that Canada's recovery will be shaped by whoever moves into 24 Sussex Drive. There are expectations that Jagmeet Singh's viral popularity might translate into youth votes, but Bennett is skeptical Gen Z can be treated like the generation that came before.
The Zeds are a bit different than some of the older millennials, and I think that that's a group that they aren't going to be bought in by some ideological thing or by holding some kind of prize over their heads. They're more pragmatic, and that's an interesting change to me.
While many Carleton students say they weren't paying close attention to the election, each had issues they were passionate about.
The big issue for me is always kind of two things. It's always like school, because I'm a student right now, so it really kind of stunk that so much funding got taken away from schooling. And also for me, it's always about the environment. I'm super big on sustainability. So those are the kind of two things I look for.
I think homelessness is a big problem. I'm from Toronto, and I know that there's been a lot of issues with like affordable housing, and that's like really kind of close to my heart, I think. So I really hope that that's an issue that can get dealt with.
I think the big issue is that people can't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, it seems like it's just policy after policy that don't seem to actually bring any results.
For CPAC, I'm Xiaoli Li.